What is going on, guys? It is your one of the IWC Gamers Goon. Today we have the Elimination Chamber review. Now this show ended on a way I don't think anybody thought was going to end. But let's talk about the pre-show first. Going into the pre-show, we heard that Keith Lee was getting pulled from the United States Championship match that was supposed to go down. It was supposed to be Matt Riddle versus Bobby Lashley versus Keith Lee. And Keith Lee got pulled due to injury. He's not injured. He is not injured. Earlier on this week, there was rumors going around that Vince was not a big fan of Keith Lee. Hopefully, it's not a legit injury angle. I don't really think it is. I just think he's fallen out of favor with Vince for whatever reason that might be, and Vince needs to figure this shit out because, let's be honest, Keith Lee could be the main event of any pay-per-view, and I don't think anybody here would be complaining. So I'm just not a big fan of seeing Keith Lee pulled here because I haven't heard anything legit out of Keith Lee being legitimately injured. The one thing I do know is ever since the little engagement post from Mia Yim and Keith Lee came out, Keith Lee ain't been around TV. So I don't know if that has anything to do with what Vince sees with him or whatever, but hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully he can get back in good favor. But that set up for the pre-show's match here. We had a fatal four-way to see who would be entering the Elimination Chamber match. And in the pre-show, they set it off to fill Keith Lee's spot, which because he was injured, which, as I said, not true. But it was between Elias, Ricochet, John Morrison, and Mustafa Ali. Immediately, I'm thinking, hey, Ali's got to win this thing. He's got to win this thing. We all know what happened in Kofi Mania. Kofi replaced him. Kofi ended up making a start of himself, ended up going on to WrestleMania, ended up becoming the champion, all because Mustafa Ali got hurt. So you'd be thinking, hey, the story writes itself. Mustafa Ali fills an injury slot, ends up becoming a champion. It made sense. So I immediately was like, Ali has to win this thing. He has to. I was sorely mistaken. They give an early tease that Ali would be able to steal an easy victory here with a roll-up pin here on Ricochet. But that's not what ends up happening. We have Ali pretty much manhandling Ricochet early on. But then we have Elias come in. He takes advantage of Ali, but Slapjack pulls Elias out of the ring to keep Ali alive here. And then we end up getting the typical pinfall shit that we always get, where somebody has a move, goes for the pinfall, somebody breaks it up. You've seen a fatal four-way match before. But Morrison ends up hitting a moonlight dive off of the top rope, and it's on to Ricochet for a 2 count. Then he goes for the Starship Pain as Ricochet moves out of the way. This time, Ricochet starts getting some momentum back. He starts going after everybody. He starts building himself up. He thinks he's about to do it. But then we get a pinning attempt from Morrison, which ends up getting broken up. Ricochet, he then goes to the outside trying to take out Retribution. He dives to the outside. Ali, he's sitting there on the edge because you ain't gonna outmatch 3 dudes of Retribution. He's just sitting outside laughing at Ricochet's terrible attempt. And what happens when you're not paying attention? You got John Morrison right behind you with a roll-up. First question I have is, why did Morrison win? He did not need to win. And one of the things on my notes here says he was just going to eat the pin later on in the evening. And as we'll get in later on in the evening, that's exactly what Morrison did. But then we start off with the main show. We get the chamber match for the number 1 contendership to face Roman Reigns later on in the night. Not that much later on than I think we all thought it would be. I thought maybe it would be the main event, but it wasn't. No. They made sure that it was going to last 30 seconds. Immediately before this match even begins, they ban the film crew of Sami Zayn. He has the film crew coming around to expose the conspiracies going on. And if Vince wanted to pay attention to detail, he kind of had Omos out in the main event with AJ Styles. So what's the difference there? Just nobody paid attention to that one? I don't know. But my pick to start everything, I said on Friday that my pick was Cesaro. He ended up starting it off with Daniel Bryan. I tweeted out, I said, hey, Cesaro's going to have to run the gauntlet. One of these two guys were going to have to run the gauntlet if it was going to happen. And this year, I would argue that I think that we need to be able to hear the people in the chamber. I think it added another level, because I don't really recall ever being able to hear what they're saying inside the chamber. I just don't remember that being a thing because of like the crowd. I don't think they really mic'd up like that. But you could hear Kevin Owens. You could hear Jey Uso was in there trying to coach up Cesaro and Bryan. It was pretty cool. They're like, oh, target the knee. It was pretty cool. And that leads to the first pod entrant, which is King Corbin. Immediately, King Corbin targets Cesaro. He throws Cesaro into the pod. Then he throws Bryan. He starts throwing Bryan into the steel chamber. Starts off very, very aggressive from King Corbin, just using his straight power. Then he goes back into the ring. They trade some moves where Corbin ends up hitting a deep 6 on both guys. He tries to pin both. Both kick out at 2. Corbin is just, at this point, he's just using the chamber to his dismay. He's just throwing everybody into chambers. Very dominant performance here to start off for Baron Corbin. And that is before the second pod entrant, which is Sami Zayn. But Sami Zayn's holding the pod closed. He's not letting anybody get in. But the thing he doesn't realize is Cesaro is on the other side of the pod. He enters the pod. He drags Sami Zayn out of the pod. And he starts beating up on Sami Zayn. Corbin then, he becomes the only man standing. Sami comes out of nowhere, trips him up, goes for a haluva on Daniel Bryan. Bryan ends up moving. Sami Zayn runs his foot into the pod. Corbin then comes from behind Daniel, hits a superplex onto Daniel. Sami Zayn gets up. He hits a tornado DDT, which is on Cesaro. That's a 2 count. Sami then focuses back on Corbin and Bryan while they're both down. He goes to go at Cesaro, but he gets catapulted off. He ran towards Cesaro. Cesaro threw him up. He caught himself, ended up going on top of the pod that Jey Uso was in. And from there, Sami is starting to fight with Cesaro on the top of the pod. Cesaro chases after him. They're both climbing the pod. Cesaro gets up. He pulls himself to the top of the pod. Does a leg drop onto Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn goes flying down. He starts doing pull-ups on top of the chamber. When he comes down, though, he is caught by by Corbin, and he ends up getting put into a clothesline from Corbin. Corbin then goes back in the ring. He hits a choke slam on Daniel Bryan. Then we see Cesaro come back in. He trades moves with Baron Corbin. Cesaro then comes and he hits a jumping uppercut into a Swiss swing into a sharpshooter, which makes Baron Corbin tap, and he is the first one eliminated from this Elimination Chamber match. Then the next pod entrant is immediately following, and it is Kevin Owens. Sami Zayn, first guy to talk to Kevin Owens. As soon as he enters, he says, hey, listen, we've been friends in the past. Listen, we're not the poster boys for success here. Let's do it together. We've already been friends. We can do this. And Kevin Owens isn't having it. Kevin Owens is not having it. He throws Sami Zayn into the pods. Then he goes back into the ring, starts fighting with Daniel Bryan. Then Kevin Owens has Cesaro, who takes him out. Bryan then goes for a sleeper hold, and KO comes and drops him on Cesaro, but that is a 2 count on both men. Then all the focus goes back towards Sami. Sami, while Kevin Owens is focused on him, ends up biting Kevin Owens, and he goes for an elbow. He jumps off the top rope, and that ends up getting into a super kick from Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens is now the only guy left standing. He starts doing his cannonball everywhere. Zayn gets up. He hits a suplex out of nowhere, which then is followed up by an uppercut onto Zayn, which is then followed by a running knee from Bryan, which is then followed by a pop-up powerbomb from Kevin Owens. Zayn then again tries to join Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens hits a neck breaker for a 2 onto Sami Zayn. Then he hits a neck breaker on a Daniel Bryan for 2. Then Jey Uso enters the chamber to finish it off. Kevin Owens and Jey Uso go back at it immediately. Obviously, Jey Uso costed Kevin Owens at the Royal Rumble. Kevin Owens then started using the chamber as a weapon to dismantle Jey Uso. Kevin Owens climbs on top of the pod and he hits the moonsault onto everybody at this point. And then he starts hitting stunners onto everybody. Sami Zayn, he tries to go for a haluva. Kevin Owens sidesteps, hits a stunner. Sami Zayn has been eliminated. That leaves 4 guys left in this match. Then we have Kevin Owens. He goes right back to the attack on Jey Uso. Jey Uso shuts the door. So, like, as Sami Zayn was leaving, he kind of, like, tripped up Kevin Owens. And he slammed the door onto Kevin Owens' arm. He wasn't letting it go. So, Kevin Owens' arm's just pinned in there. Starts hitting super kicks onto his head. It was quite the scene, to say the least. And then he rolls him back in, and he ends up pinning him, which was the end of it for Kevin Owens. So now Jey Uso, he's like a shark with blood in the water. He's just targeting everyone at this point. He's trying to single out his next victim, which happens to be Cesaro, but Cesaro catches him out of nowhere with the uppercut, then jumps off. Here he goes top rope, jumps off the top rope with an elbow drop, which gets him a 2 count. Cesaro then goes for a Swiss swing, but with this Swiss swing, he's on the outside of the ring, which means Jey Uso's head's hitting the chamber. So a very creative way to use the Swiss swing there. Bryan then tries to hit a crossbody on Cesaro from behind. Cesaro catches him, throws him back into the ring, goes top rope, goes for a high risk, but he ends up getting kicked in the ribs by Daniel. Bryan then goes for a backslide, which gets him 2, into a kick there to the head, to another 2 count on Cesaro. Bryan then just starts stomping on Cesaro, which set him up for a running knee on Cesaro, but it ends up going, Cesaro ends up catching him, tries to go for the torture rack, and ends up being countered into a roll-up from Bryan, which was another 2, and after that 2, he kicked him in the head again with another super kick. Then we see Bryan go top rope. Cesaro stops him. He hits an uppercut, and then we just see Cesaro, while he's on the top rope, just continuously throwing uppercuts on Daniel Bryan, and he goes for a gut buster. And at this point, he grabs Daniel Bryan by his bad knee, which was told earlier on in this match. And he goes for the Swiss swing on that, but he gets super kicked by Jey Uso, which ends up being a 3 count on Cesaro. Then we have Uso hit a frog splash on Daniel Bryan. Jey Uso climbs to the top of the chamber. He goes for a frog splash. Bryan gets the knees ups, then he hits a running knee afterwards, and that match has culminated. Daniel Bryan wins. I don't know why you'd have Daniel Bryan win. He should be the one facing Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. I'm not a big fan of that, because this set up Roman Reigns versus Daniel Bryan, which Roman Reigns wasn't wasting any time. He said, you know what, we're taking this match right now. He came on down to the ring, wasted no time to face Daniel Bryan, and I actually didn't have a problem with the way this match went, necessarily, because Bryan, he was barely able to stand. Roman was just waiting for him to get up so he could hit the spear. He ends up going for the spear. Bryan catches him, puts him in the yes lock. Roman starts biting on Daniel Bryan's hand, eventually gets out of it. Roman starts just clubbing on the back of Daniel Bryan. And then he hits a powerbomb onto Daniel Bryan. Roman then locks in the guillotine. The ref calls the match. Very simple way to set up the Mania match, but there's one outlier, because yeah, it left a lot to be desired. Yeah, it set up a Mania match. Yeah, it did all that stuff. And all you had to do is, this match could have easily been set up so Daniel Bryan could have got the Mania shot against Roman Reigns. If all you had to do is have Drew McIntyre declared as Edge's opponent. But no, Edge comes in here and he spears Roman Reigns, and we are told that Edge and Roman Reigns is the plans. So, yeah. Instead of Daniel Bryan having a WrestleMania main event, we are getting Edge, who is going to have one. And now we're not getting Drew because of what happened later on. So not only is Drew screwed over, not only is Daniel Bryan screwed over, but this isn't really helping out anybody. This is not helping out Edge. This is even helping out Edge. He'd easily beat Drew McIntyre. There'd be no reason why he wouldn't win the title. Set up a great story. He went out with a concussion protocol, his neck problems. He was gone. He wasn't coming back to wrestling, and then he came back. And he could easily have been a champion. All he had to do was stay and face Drew McIntyre. But he's facing Roman Reigns. You know, I had some little geek on Twitter sit there and say, well, this match makes sense because it's spear versus spear. What makes sense about it? You're screwing over Drew. You're screwing over Daniel. And Edge, if Edge somehow manages to beat Roman Reigns, that's not a good look on him because he's not willing to put over the guy that is currently and will continue to be the future of SmackDown. Why would you risk that? It makes zero sense. No sense at all. I don't understand that. Not one bit. It was a terrible decision. It was a terrible, terrible decision. The U.S. title match, we got underway. I didn't catch much of the beginning of this match because me and my little group shout out to the family, bro. We were all a little bit worked up over the whole Edge situation because now we don't even get to see Daniel. We don't even get to see Daniel in a prominent match at WrestleMania. What's he gonna do? What's he gonna do? And it gets worse along the night. It gets worse because now Drew is not even solidified as our main eventer. Makes no sense for anybody. But when I started taking notes, we had Lashley. He's on the attack on Riddle. We've gotten used to that. Lashley just beats the shit out of Riddle anytime he pleases. Morrison being a coward, just sitting outside with The Miz, not doing much. What's new? Then we have Riddle and Morrison. They start teaming up on Lashley. They're like, you know what? Let's be honest. He's winning this match as long as we don't team up on him. So let's start teaming up on him. Team up on him. Lashley gets taken out. Now we get Riddle and Morrison going at it. Morrison hits a Starship Pain onto Bobby Lashley. Lashley kicks out. And then we have MVP, who is sitting there with his crutch because he has a bum knee. He's sitting there talking shit to John Morrison, saying, oh, you're not going to pin him, whatever. Morrison comes outside. He's like, and MVP's like, what are you going to do? He grabs his crutch from him, rolls in the ring. It's a triple threat match, so there's no disqualification. He goes to use the crutch on to Lashley. Lashley hooks in the guillotine. The crutch falls down. Riddle comes from behind, grabs the crutch, uses it, throws Lashley out the ring, ends up pinning Morrison. I told you all my predictions. I don't have any rhyme or reason to why I picked Riddle to win this. I just saw it coming, and it happened. Is it the right decision? Absolutely not. But, I guess it works because of what they set up maybe at the end of the night, which I'm not 100% sure is even going to happen. I don't know. Does it work? Maybe. I don't know. But what'd you expect? Logic, you don't get that. At least not on Monday and Fridays. Then we get into the women's tag team match. We had Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax versus Sasha Banks and Bianca. Obviously, everybody knows who should have won this match. But we have Reginald come before the match, and he comes to hype up Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair. And I was like, hey, you already know they're going to win the titles. Just add those titles to their title reigns. You already know the girls are going to win it. But maybe I spoke too soon. Because although they should have, they didn't. Sasha and Bianca obviously have way more chemistry in the ring as a tag team than Shayna and Nia. I absolutely hate the team of Shayna and Nia. They are garbage. Nia and her hole can go. They can go. I will not lose to them. Move Shayna Baszler back to where she belongs in a women's title picture that is not the women's tag team titles. Move her to face Asuka at WrestleMania. That's simple. She does not need to be teaming with Nia Jax. She doesn't. Sasha and Bianca, though, were carrying this match pretty much the whole way through. Everything they did was cool. Shayna, she was doing a good job at putting them over. Sasha ends up hitting a frog splash onto Shayna, ends up getting a 2. Bianca hits the kiss of death onto Shayna, but then gets pulled out from My Whole Nia Jax. And then after that, Bianca tries to hit the kiss of death onto Nia. That ain't happening. I would love to see that happen, but it's not happening. I don't think that's happening anytime soon. Vince loves to put over Nia. That's for sure. Nia uses her power to take Bianca out. Then Sasha tries to save Bianca a little bit, but Nia ends up picking up Bianca for a Samoan drop. Sasha puts in the tag, hits a Meteor, which gets a 2. Reginald walks down the ring. He has champagne. He's really ready to celebrate already. He brings it down to the ring, and Sasha Banks ends up putting a bank statement, looking directly at Reginald like, "Hey, we're gonna be having a party after this." And Nia, she grabs the rope, gets out of it, and as that happens, Reginald hands Sasha the bottle of wine. Sasha's like, "I'm not gonna use this." She didn't use it because the ref saw it. And then Nia hit a Samoan drop and pins the women's champion Sasha Banks. Yeah. Nia Botch. Yes. That one. Yeah, she pinned the women's champion. Yeah. That makes a whole lot of sense, Vince. I don't understand why this match was made last night, or not last night, Friday on the fly. There was no need for this match. There was nothing that insinuated that this match was going to happen. They just needed to fill a spot, and they were like, "Hey, we're going to put this match on the card." This could have been anybody. This could have been a Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott. Do I think that should have been? No. I don't think anybody should be subject to losing to Nia Botch, but they did. And it would have been a lot easier to swallow if Ruby Riott gets pinned by Nia Jax rather than your women's champion, Sasha Banks. Why would you do that? Why? That makes zero sense. Because now Nia legitimately has a claim at the SmackDown Women's Championship. And if you think that is going to be the Mania match, holy shit, Vince, I'm sorry, but you are. Terrible. Then we get into the WWE Championship Chamber match. Now, this match was actually pretty decent. I'm not even going to lie to you guys. We had Jeff Hardy here and Randy Orton. They started it off. They were both going at it. Nothing special happened the first time. The first pod opened, and it was Drew McIntyre. He goes straight at Randy, obviously, reference back to their feud. Drew wastes no time, and then he starts going after Hardy. Randy, and then he goes back to Randy, which he applies the pressure on. He throws Randy into the chamber. Then he's back on Hardy now, using Hardy to throw into the chamber. Then we get the second entrance of the pods, and this time it is Kofi who immediately targets Randy, throwback to their WWE Championship feud from after WrestleMania 35. Then we have Randy. He's beating up on Kofi pretty quickly, just clubbing on him. Kofi ends up hitting a quick roll-up, and Randy gets pinned. He's out. Then he starts hitting RKOs on everybody because he's frustrated. He got eliminated, which after he hit the RKOs, we have Omos, who, mind you, was not ejected from ringside prior to the match like Sami Zayn's group. But he rips open AJ's pod, and AJ goes in. He slithers into the thing while Randy Orton is walking out. He tries to pin him, doesn't pin him. Adam Pearce comes down, ejects Omos from the match. Kofi then hits a DDT onto AJ. Drew and Hardy are at it. They're fighting. Drew pushes Hardy into a pod. Kofi hits the SOS on Drew for a 2. Drew then focuses on Hardy once again while AJ's on Kofi. And they, after AJ and Kofi were going at it, AJ goes over and he starts stomping on the beaten down Drew McIntyre. AJ then hits a brainbuster onto Kofi for a 2 count. Kofi, he sees that AJ's on the outside, goes to go for a submission on Drew, which Drew is just stronger and just back body drop on him easily. So Drew is the only one left standing at this point. Then we have Sheamus, the last entrant of this. We get a Sheamus and Drew face-off. I'm like, damn, this could actually be the WrestleMania match right now. You got the big vibe feeling there. You got the feeling from it. And, of course, they shit the bed. What's new? So we have Sheamus. He gets in there. He faces off with Drew. Drew and Sheamus, they both exchange blows early on. Then we have Jeff Hardy and AJ Styles both just start clubbing on both Sheamus and Drew. After that, we have both men just throw everybody out there like, hey, we're just bigger and stronger than all of you. And we go back to the regular scheduled program of Sheamus and Drew beating the shit out of each other. While we on the outside see AJ and Kofi starting to beat the shit out of each other. Kofi then takes the opportunity to dive onto Sheamus and Drew while they are not paying attention. Then we get back into the ring where we see Kofi and Sheamus. They start trading moves. Sheamus goes for a top rope move. Kofi fights out of the move, climbs on top of the pod. Sheamus climbs up for him. Drew climbs up trying to stop Sheamus. And you know where this is going because it all turns into the big superplex thing that we always see with 4 guys. Styles and Hardy then both go for pins, but they cannot get it on Drew and Sheamus respectively. Kofi is now on the top of the pod all by himself. He does the trust fall, jumps off the top. He's not able to pin anybody. Sheamus catches Kofi's trust fall the second time, hits a brogue kick on Kofi, and Sheamus eliminates Kofi. 4 remain. Then we have Jeff Hardy. He hits a swanton onto AJ, which I'm thinking AJ's gone. AJ's gone at this point. And soon as he gets up from the swanton, he gets claymored, and Hardy gets eliminated. So Drew McIntyre with an elimination there. Then Sheamus goes for a quick knee in the face of Drew, which comes to 2. He starts while Drew's on the ground. He has him on his knees, just doing the chest beat onto Drew. Then he goes over to AJ, starts stomping on AJ, goes back to Drew, uses his boot to just have the blood rush go to Drew's head. Tries to go for a white noise on Drew, but doesn't the first time. Drew gets out of it, hits the Glasgow kiss. Sheamus then hits the white noise to follow. And now they're both laying down. AJ hits a 450 onto Drew, which goes for 2. Hits another 450 onto Drew, which also goes for 2. Then Sheamus starts beating up on AJ. AJ is on the outside now. He's getting his chest beat now. The famous Irish beating. So Sheamus then goes to the top rope, goes for a clothesline on AJ, sets up the brogue kick onto him, but out of nowhere Drew comes, he hits a DDT. Drew goes for a Claymore, but he doesn't connect with the Claymore because Sheamus actually hit him with the brogue kick first. But while Drew's looking at a dismantled, or while Sheamus is looking at a dismantled Drew McIntyre that he could possibly pin, out of nowhere AJ comes with a phenomenal forearm and Sheamus gets eliminated. So now it's AJ and Drew. AJ at this point, he's going for another phenomenal forearm to close things out on Drew McIntyre, but out of nowhere Drew McIntyre hits a mid-air Claymore onto AJ Styles and he ends up picking up the victory. And Drew McIntyre is going to WrestleMania, or is he? Because as soon as we see that happen, we have Mr. Bobby Lashley walk on down to the ring. He speared Drew, dismantled Drew, took him to the outside, started throwing him all around the arena. He throws him into the announcer table. It was a beating. It was a beating. Rolls him back in the ring, puts the Hurt Lock on, slams him down afterwards, looks up, and you hear awesome, you know what that means. Mike Mizanin, The Miz, running on down to the ring to cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase. Looks at Bobby Lashley, cashes it in. The ref cashes in him this time. Miz is officially in the match now. Miz has a title opportunity. Miz hits a DDT. Drew kicks out. I'm like, oh shit, they're really going to make Miz look like a fool and he's going to lose this somehow. But he hits a skull-crushing finale, and Mike Mizanin wins the title. So, let me get this right. We go into the night thinking that Edge and Drew is going to be the main, or is going to be your WrestleMania match, so that Edge can finally be a champion after, 10 years? And that doesn't happen. Instead, he's facing Roman, who he's inevitably going to lose to. We go into the night thinking that Daniel Bryan is going to have a WrestleMania match in a main event against Roman Reigns, and that doesn't happen. We don't even know if Daniel Bryan is going to be getting a Mania match at this point. We don't even know if Drew McIntyre is going to be getting a Mania match at this point. Who's to say Drew McIntyre does not face The Miz at Fastlane and lose and not get that match? Maybe it is a Sheamus. Maybe it is a Randy Orton. I don't know. I don't know, but that was a really confusing night of professional wrestling, to say the least. Very confusing. I don't know what the plan is. I have zero idea what the Raw plan is. Do I like The Miz as a champion? Yes, I'm a Miz guy. You guys know that. But it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. You can't have The Miz as a champion when, realistically, at most, he lasts 2 months. Tops. There's no way Miz carries it after Mania. I honestly would not be surprised if Miz dropped the title tomorrow night. That simple. I would not be surprised if the deal that we saw between The Miz and MVP was Lashley will help you win the title, but he gets first dibs on your title, which happens to be tomorrow night. I could easily see that. And then we see Lashley and Drew, Lashley going into Mania as the title holder. I don't know. All I can tell you is it sure as hell confused me. I'm sure it confused a lot of you. But anyways, you guys will be hearing from me. I believe Revolution is the next pay-per-view. I think that is before Fastlane, March 7th. Yeah, I think that is the next day that you will be having a review. Obviously the preview, predictions, all that stuff staying around, whatever. But I'm pretty sure March 7th is the next big show. So make sure you stick around for that. Let me know what you guys thought of the Elimination Chamber down below. Make sure you like it. Make sure you share it with your friends. Make sure you comment, do all that fun stuff. And as always, make sure you go follow the Twitter at GamersGoonYT, the Instagram at thegoongameryt. You already know the whole ordeal. And I told y'all that I would be announcing the guest. And the guest for the Mania preview predictions, which will be the Wednesday. I will be filming it the Wednesday of Mania week after AEW, which I'm not sure exactly what day. I think it's probably going to get released on Friday, maybe Thursday for you guys. I'm not sure yet. But I have 2 guests that are lined up that will be joining me for that show. And the first one, I'm sure you guys all know him. I'm pretty confident in saying that you know him. He is one of the most iconic figures here in the IWC. A friend of mine, DJ Storms. Yes, Mr. Controversy will be joining the channel here on WrestleMania week. So make sure you mark your calendars, because that one, we're going to be shooting the shit, and it's going to be good. You already know it's going to be good. I'm sure you guys, if you go and listen when I joined him, it was pure greatness. Now it's coming to my channel for my first collaboration, and we got one more guest, which will be announced on Revolution Saturday. be on the lookout for that. But DJ Storms will be joining me for WrestleMania this year to preview it for you guys and to predict it for you guys. Hopefully you guys stick around and make sure you come back for that one. This should be a very good one. But for right now, it's been your role model of the IWC Gamers Goon. I'll be seeing you guys in the next one.